I will say last night, Blake, it was actually one of the deeper debates that we've seen in the modern era.
It really was. Like, it's a little sad, but I feel like the Veep debates generally are a bit better than the major ones. I think maybe they're a lot of Veeps, more so than nominees, I think are picked for kind of being likable people, very genial. They don't necessarily have a very strong brand, and that is conducive to, good substantive debate. Their job is don't screw it up, don't alienate people. And so I think we saw that. You saw both candidates were giving more concessions to each other. It was less combative, and that means you have more room to talk about actual policy stuff, although the best policy moment was still when JD had to mansplain about, the phone app you can get to
I want to get to that.
into America.
I want to get to that tape, but my favorite part of the entire night from a substance standpoint is when JD Vance read the room and the electorate. Tim Walz was really confused and was not really sure what was going on, where JD Vance said, no, the expert class, the ruling class, the oligarchy has gotten a lot wrong. Let's think about it. They said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. They said that it was okay to mask your child and to shut down your kid's local school. They said that the vaccine was safe and effective. They said that the border was secure. They said that we were spreading democracy in Iraq. They said that the Afghan war was going to be a success. They said that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I'm forgetting some.
They said that sending all of our manufacturing abroad would make the middle class thrive.
That's the example JD used, which was great. But Tim Walz was almost mockingly saying, well, let me get a list here. Are you trying to say you don't trust the military and don't trust the FBI and don't trust the CDC? And it's like, yeah, Tim Walz, actually, we don't trust these institutions because they've prioritized diversity, equity, inclusion, not merit. They are no longer in the pursuit of excellence and in the best for the country. We are no longer a nation where our institutions are ones that our best and brightest are filling it. Instead, the institutions we do trust are the private sector ones like SpaceX and Tesla that actually do things and make stuff.
At least temporarily are able to get away with hiring on merit, and like your administration takes aim at them for that reason.
Bingo. And this was the greatest line, and I stood up and I applauded. I say this all the time on college campuses, and this was part of kind of one of the things I texted JD about. I texted him this 2,000-word essay. I was like, here's all my thoughts about the debate. One of the things I said is, don't be afraid to reject the consensus of the ruling class, because what's happening in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania is everyday voters. They have wisdom and common sense, but they might not have PhDs. And that is the divide. You see, the Democrat Party, they are the defenders of the credentialed oligarchy. The Democrat Party believes if you have a credential from Harvard, you're inherently more qualified to make decisions. So, for example, Anthony Fauci must know what's best for your life because he's been in medicine for 40 years. Like, actually, no, we have practical judgment, prudence, and wisdom. You just have a certificate. This was J.D. Vance's best moment that really was edifying and was extremely telling about the divide. If you trust the government, if you trust the FBI, and if you trust the CDC, and if you trust Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, vote for Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. But if you trust citizens, vote for Trump. Play cut 130.
If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world.
They have PhDs, but they don't have wisdom. I love that. And by the way, you want to win over the muscular class in Ohio and win over the muscular class in Pennsylvania? That is exactly how. And understand that the example he kept on repeating was the deindustrialization of the heartland of the country was one of the great public policy failures of the modern era. Tim Walz, couldn't have it both ways. Tim Walz said, well, I think it was a mistake to deindustrialize the heartland. Well, which is it then? Is it that we should trust McKinsey and Deloitte and the managerial class that basically came in with a bunch of central planning pride and said, oh, we're going to move these factories to Wuhan, everything will be great? Blake, J.D. Vance was on the side of voters on this issue.
Yeah, it's just, and we're getting back to what originally caused Trump to take off so much. And it was that he had that brash developer ability to just point at something that's obviously insane, and they only maintain the facade that it's not insane by this suffocating unanimity among the expert class that it's great. Oh yeah, like the border is great. The border is secure. Actually, Trump's border was the worst border ever. No, that's just obviously not true. You can see that by going outside. Oh, the lockdowns were a great idea. No, that's obviously insane. Anyone can look at a school and tell that educating kids by Zoom was a terrible idea. And it's really good to show, Vance's showing there was really great because it shows how that Trump brashness, that Trump directness, that Trump ability to call out BS is migrating out into the rest of the right-wing political sphere, which is that transition we need to make in order to have a post-Trump MAGA political movement.
Let's play more tape here. I think that's really smart, and I totally agree. The back and forth was remarkable, and I want to make sure I hit this one part here because it was lesser reported. So, and it actually this comes very personal to me as a Christian, as I frequently quote scripture as a moral backbone of how I think society should run and how I think we should derive our morality from. And so here, it's really telling. So liberals and Democrats, or even Republicans, are allowed to quote scripture as long as it's for open borders and secular worldview and mutilating kids. Fine. Scripture is permissible in the justification of left-wing politics. But if I were to quote scripture about that God created man and woman,
Christian nationalist Charlie Kirk.
It's Christian nationalism. Exactly. Play cut 127. By the way, this is a misquoting and a misapplication. Tim Walz trying to win over evangelical voters. Play cut 127.
I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Okay. And the way that should have been responded is, great, Tim. So what about the 320,000 missing kids from the southern border, that many of whom are now sex slaves? How is an open border helping them? Okay. So, but what's so telling, though, is that the MSNBC panel loved the fact that Tim Walz used scripture because it derived morality. This was so fascinating to me. So if Donald Trump or Charlie Kirk or J.D. Vance were to use scripture to justify any of our public policy positions, MSNBC would lose its fit. They'd have Tim Alberta on there saying that you guys are rising as fascism and Christian nationalists and you're the worst thing ever. But if Tim Walz uses scripture, it's, well, he's really bringing morals into this conversation. This is Jen Psaki talking about how she's going to circle back to Tim Walz not starting well. Listen carefully. Play cut 114.
But tonight, I felt like he was spending a lot of time in the first half or two-thirds proving he read the briefing materials, and I was missing the magic and the organic spontaneity of Tim Walz. I know you already all talked about the January 6th moment, which I thought was great, and the moment on healthcare, also great. I loved it when he quoted the Bible and made it about morality on immigration. But coming out of it, I hope that they free Tim Walz and put him out there and let him be rusty at times and make mistakes and hug football players and cry and be funny sometimes. That's the magic. That's why he's on the ticket.
Whoa. Made it about morality when it comes to immigration. So just so we're clear, it is now permissible to have the Bible be a standard of morality in political discourse. I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. When I talk about how God created men and women, we talk about how borders are a biblical concept, we talk about how life begins at conception, all of that is, no, Charlie, it's separation of church and state. But this is so important, everybody. The moment you use scripture to justify left-wing politics, I'm glad that you're bringing morals into the conversation.